Competency number 1.5, Transport across cell membrane. We know about the different properties of the cell membrane, the key properties being semi-permeability and selectivity. So when I say it is semi-permeable, I mean that it allows only certain substances to pass through freely across the cell membrane, whereas the large and the charged substances are typically blocked. And when I talk about selectivity, I mean that it has a presence of certain protein which regulate the passage of substances which cannot cross through it freely. So basically, we need some transport mechanism which facilitate the movement of substances across the cell membrane, and these transport processes are the active transport mechanism and the passive transport mechanisms. We have these cartoons which are trying to explain the differences between the passive transport mechanism and the active transport mechanism. So have a look at them and find the differences and the similarities. Similarity, I would say, we have the same hill, the same amount of load that is there, and the same person. Okay, so the difference is, in one of the cartoon depiction, we have the person throwing the stone along the gradient of the hill. So he finds it easy. He's saying that this is an easy job because less amount of energy is required by him. And in the other one, you can see he is literally moving the rock with lot of energy against the gradient of the hill. So he is finding it as a hard job. So if we apply the similar mechanism to a cell transport, what do you see? We have two transport mechanisms, the passive transport and the active transport. When the movement is along the concentration gradient with no energy expenditure, it is a passive movement, and therefore passive transport, it is known by the name of downhill movement of the substances. Whereas in the active transport mechanism, we can say that it is an uphill movement of the substances. It occurs against the concentration gradient, and because it is moving against the concentration gradient, it requires the breakdown of high energy compounds, mainly the ATP. So examples will be the sodium potassium ATPase or calcium ATPase, which are causing the breakdown of ATP into ADP for the movement. And for the example of the passive transport, we say that it is occurring along the concentration gradient. So we have an example of simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion for this transport mechanism. So we are basically having two mechanisms, the passive transport and the active transport. Passive transport is a mechanism of transport of substances along the concentration gradient without expenditure of any energy. Here you can see the movement of substances is occurring from higher concentration gradient in the extracellular fluid to the intracellular fluid where it is low in concentration. A similar movement may also occur from inside of the cell to the outside if the substance is present in higher concentration inside the cell. As we talked earlier, the metabolic waste products, the movement is in the opposite direction. And the example of passive transport mechanisms, we have diffusion and osmosis. We have three types of passive transport mechanisms. One is osmosis, second being simple diffusion, and third is the facilitated diffusion. So when we talk about osmosis, it is a diffusion of water or any other solvent molecule from a region of lower solute concentration to a region of higher solute concentration. Then we have the simple diffusion, the diffusion of gases, alcohol, small molecular substances, steroid hormones, that is by simple diffusion, and it utilizes the protein channels which are present there. Facilitated diffusion uses the carrier proteins, and the diffusion is of large molecules, the molecules which cannot be diffused by simple transfusion methods. It is facilitated diffusion. So osmosis, we can see here the number of solute particles are more on the right hand side as compared to left hand side, as a result of which the water molecule is moving from a region of lower solute concentration to a region of higher solute concentration, resulting in the process which is known as osmosis. This figure has been taken from Guyton. Here we can see a semi-permeable membrane which is separating two type of column of fluid, one containing pure water and the other one containing water and solute. The solute cannot permeate through the cell membrane. Now what will happen? There will be osmosis of water from chamber B into chamber A. Why? Because osmosis results in movement of water or any other solvent from a region of low solute concentration to the high solute concentration. So once this happens, with further and further osmosis of the water to the other side, finally a pressure difference will be developed between the two sides of the membrane, which is great enough to oppose the osmotic effect. The pressure difference across the membrane at this point is equal to the osmotic pressure of the solution, and it is known by the name of osmotic pressure. And this osmotic pressure is attributed by the osmolarity of the solution. So the question arises, is there any difference between the tonicity and the osmolarity? So we know that the osmolarity is nothing but a way of expressing the concentration of the solute. So when in clinical practice we talk about it, we use the word tonicity, which is nothing but comparison with respect to plasma osmolarity, and we know that it is the effective osmotic pressure. So in the plasma we have the net plasma osmolarity of 290 milliosmoles per kg, which is attributed by sodium chloride and bicarbonate, and the by 270 milliosmoles, and 20 milliosmoles are contributed by glucose and urea. We know that the plasma osmolarity is 290 milliosmoles per liter, and when we talk in clinical practice, the tonicity refers to the tonicity of solution with respect to that of plasma. So we have the isotonic solution, where you can see the osmolarity is similar to the plasma. The RBC are neither shrinking nor there is swelling in the solution. It is 0.9% of sodium chloride, one of the example of isotonic solution. Then we have the hypotonic solution. Supposedly we have 5% glucose, or we have increased concentration of urea. So what will happen? With comparing it with the plasma, it has higher osmolarity than the plasma, resulting in the movement of water outside the RBC cell, leading to the shrinkage of RBC. Then we have the hypotonic solution, in which the osmolality is lower than that of plasma. The RBC will swell up in the hypotonic solution, and they will gain water by the process of osmosis. So we can very well understand that this tonicity is one of the important determinants for the normal physiological function of a cell. So what will happen if we do not follow the laws of osmosis, or we use a solution that is not isotonic to the body, we use a solution that is hypotonic solution, or we use a solution that is hypotonic solution? You can see here the hypotonic solution will result in the movement of water inside the cell, and it will lead to cell swelling. And then when we talk about hypotonic solution, it will cause the crenation or the shrinkage of the cell. Again, the physiological activities of the cell will be depressed. So it is very important when we talk in terms of clinical physiology, whenever a patient with dehydration has to be supplemented with the IV fluids, it should be isotonic. The isotonic fluid, there will be no net movement of the water from the cell or off the cell. It will be a balanced type of cycle of entry or exit of the water. So there will be no net diffusion of the water. So these isotonic solution are 0.9% sodium chloride, lactate, ringer, or 5% dextrose in water. So simple diffusion, as the name suggests, is a simple diffusion. It is nothing but movement of the substances along the concentration gradient from a region of high concentration gradient to a region of lower concentration gradient. What drives this movement? It is basically when the molecules strike against each other through the Brownian movement, they acquire a kinetic energy by colliding against each other, and then they cross that semi-permeable membrane if they are lipid soluble or they are small sized molecules. So it is basically a downhill movement and does not require any energy. The characteristics of the molecule which can cross through the cell membrane by simple diffusion are, as you can see, they have to be small, then they have to be small, non-polar in order to pass through the hydrophobic core, and they have to be lipid soluble. So we have gases, we have hydrophobic molecules, then we have small uncharged molecules. Although the movement of these uncharged molecules, for example water or urea, is very less in amount. You can have a look at different factors which determine the rate of diffusion, the concentration, electrical gradient, pressure gradient, then the characteristic of the substances, its size, its solubility, its charge, its temperature, and its distribution of the protein channels. Here in this slide, what you can see a fluid chamber A and fluid chamber B, which are separated by this semi-permeable membrane. So when we see the diffusion that is occurring, it is occurring in two directions which are opposing in nature. One is the diffusion from chamber A to chamber B. It is shown with green arrow. The magnitude of diffusion from B to A is shown in red arrow. So where do you think the net diffusion will occur in this condition? It will be from chamber A to chamber B, because the magnitude of diffusion is more from side A to side B. Facilitated diffusion plays a role when the water soluble molecules are large molecule, for example glucose, amino acid, or the large molecule which cannot diffuse through the ion channels. We need a separate carrier molecule. So you can understand this with the help of this animation, where a glucose molecule, red in color, cannot pass through the ion channel because it is large in size. Its transport is mediated through carrier protein, and it is a unipolar that is specific for glucose, whereas ion channel allows the passage of potassium ion. The glucose has to be transported by the carrier protein, and this type of transport is with the help of carrier protein is known as facilitated diffusion. We have already studied about the ions. The carrier proteins in a similar way is an integral type of protein that provides a tubular channel or a passage for the transportation of the substance. This is basically a glycoprotein, and it allows the movement of the substances along the concentration gradient of those molecules which are larger in size, as we have said, glucose and amino acid. However, it is specific in nature. That means if it is transporting glucose, it will be specific for that glucose only, and no other molecule can pass through it. So we can also cite an example of GLUT4, a glucose transporter that is found in fat and skeletal muscles, and it allows only the transportation of glucose through its carrier protein. So here in this slide you can see different type of carrier proteins. You have one carrier proteins which carry only one substance. As we have seen, it is known by the name of unipolar. Then we have carrier protein which can transport more than one substance, and it occurs in the same direction. Here you can see they are known by the name of sympotors. The yellow colored carrier proteins are sympotors. They are transporting sodium and glucose in same direction, and sodium and amino acid in the same direction from a region of high concentration gradient, that is extracellular fluid, into intracellular fluid. And if the substance is carried in the opposite direction by the carrier protein, it is known as antipolar or a counter transport mechanism. Here you can see the carrier protein which are blue in color are acting as an antipolar for sodium and calcium, sodium-calcium exchanger, or sodium and hydrogen. You can see the direction of both the ions is in opposite direction. So we have three main type of carrier protein transporters. We have said that this carrier mediated transport helps in the transportation of the large molecules, amino acids and glucose. So how is it different from that of the simple diffusion? First, that facilitated diffusion, although it is a downhill movement, it is mediated by a carrier protein, and the properties are it is a faster rate of transport compared to the simple diffusion because it is mediated by carrier. It is highly specific, as I said already, that these carrier protein are highly specific for different molecules or ions. A carrier protein carrying glucose will be specific for it, and a carrier protein carrying amino acid will be specific for that. Then they have a saturation point, meaning that this carrier protein carries the substance across the cell membrane. So these carrier proteins become saturated over a period of time. So when this saturation is there, then this point is reached, which is known as saturation point, where all the binding sites on the carrier protein are occupied and they cannot bind to any other substance as such, and hence they have reached a maximum capacity. So this is saturation point. They also show the phenomena of competitive inhibition, meaning whereby if we have two substances call it A and B substances, and if they are carried by the same protein, so what will happen? A competition between molecule A and molecule B will occur for the site that is present on the carrier protein. So this competitive type of inhibition is seen in case of facilitated diffusion, which is not seen in case of simple diffusion. So based on the property of saturation kinetics, we can have this graph that depicts the rate of diffusion of a substance along the concentration gradient. The diffusion of the substance can either occur from extracellular fluid to intracellular, or it can occur in a vice versa direction. So when we have this graph, that is a linear graph, the rate of diffusion is directly proportional to the concentration gradient difference. It is simple diffusion. But when we talk about facilitated diffusion, we said that it reaches a saturation because of the presence of carrier protein. So after a particular time, what will happen? It will plateau off. It cannot rise further because all the binding sites have been occupied. So this point is known as Vmax, or the point at which the maximum saturation for the facilitated diffusion is there. Okay. This slide can be used to summarize what we have learned about the passive transport mechanism. They are of two types: the simple diffusion, shown in blue color circle, and the facilitated diffusion is shown in the yellow colored one. Both of these diffusion process moves a substance along the concentration gradient, hence it is a downhill movement of the substance, does not require any energy. The simple diffusion process does not require a transport protein, whereas the facilitated diffusion requires a transport protein, because simple diffusion carry the substances which are either lipophilic or they have a small sized, or they are small sized particles, whereas the facilitated diffusion carries the substances which are large size, for example glucose, amino acids, or they are charged in nature. The simple diffusion does not require a carrier protein, as we said, and the facilitated requires a carrier protein. The simple diffusion does not show a saturation maximum, whereas the facilitated diffusion, because of the presence of carrier protein, shows Vmax, that is, it reaches a saturation point beyond which the rate of diffusion of the substances across a particular cell membrane is limited, which is the Vmax of the facilitated diffusion.